Good evening, everybody. We're going to give people just a couple more minutes to join or another minute to join. But while we do that, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Knightscope Town Hall. I am Stacy Stevens, Executive Vice President and Chief Client Officer here at Knightscope, and I'll be moderating tonight's discussion. Joining me today is Knightscope's Chairman and CEO, Mr. William Santana Lee. But before I turn it over to him, let's cover a few housekeeping items. Number one, this is an interactive event on Zoom and will be streaming on Facebook Live, which means the recording will be available to you later to view at your convenience. For those attending in Zoom, you will see a tab at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. Click on that tab, it'll open a dialog box for you to submit your question. For those joining us on Facebook Live, enter your questions in the comment bar. I will be playing traffic cop and teeing up those questions for Bill as time permits. All right, now that we have all that out of the way, let's get started. At this time, it is my distinct pleasure to turn it over to William Santana Lee for a quick legal disclaimer, I'm sure. And then he'll jump right into a brief overview of our acquisition of Case Emergency Systems. Bill.
Hey, good to see you, Stacy. There may be some forward-looking statements, kind of read the normal disclaimer that we would have for any of our press releases. But with that out of the way, really excited to be here. I've bought a couple dozen companies in my life. This is probably one of the most exciting ones, and really excited about the future as we focus Knightscope on continued growth and making a difference across our communities in terms of improving overall public safety infrastructure. So we thought the best way to do this is not to PowerPoint everyone to death. I think Stacy has been accumulating a few questions here and there. I haven't seen most of them, so I'm going to be in the hot seat here for the next 60 minutes. Our trusty CFO is on the sidelines just in case there's like a lot of hard questions, and Mallory's just going to have to take over the webinar. But with that, Stacy, you want to go ahead and hit me with the first one?
Actually, why don't you talk a little bit just about the acquisition itself, just to give people a brief overview. Some may not have been able to read through the press release or get all the latest news. So let's kick it off with kind of what happened.
What happened? So we had listed the company back in January on NASDAQ, and part of the listing process, we had mentioned that we might become acquisitive over time. And so a few months after that, we started looking at potential acquisition targets, and around primarily, I'll say 3 or 4 characteristics that we've been looking for: top line revenue growth, some technology components, talent, and on a kind of as needed basis, or if it was opportunistic, anything around facilities, because we've got a couple issues that we wanted to work out. And so we've got a list of a few dozen potential targets. Came across Case Emergency Systems that has continued to grow, and started to think about synergies. Where could we have opportunities there? And we'll get into it during this webinar, but there's a lot of synergies from marketing and sales to technology to logistics and the like. And we struck up a good conversation with their awesome CEO, Sebastian Gutierrez. And we've been talking for what seems like years now, but it's only been a few months working through the transaction. And what we announced this week is the acquisition of Case Emergency Systems by Knightscope. It's an accretive transaction. Top line revenue growth for top line revenue last year for Case was about $5.4 million. They have a significant overlap in customer base, and we'll get into that today. And we also saw some interesting things that we can participate on in integration with technologies, be it solar, cellular, and then probably the most important point for me is building on what the Case team has already built. They have 7,000 devices all across the country. And this is, I think, a wonderful opportunity to do in concert with the incoming and existing clients, a massive overhaul of that public safety infrastructure to make the places you live, work, study, and visit much, much safer. So that's a little bit of the overview. The transaction actually was financed with the convertible notes. So provided we pay that back down in cash, it's a non-dilutive transaction for the most part. So that's a quick overview, but Stacy, you want to get into it?
Absolutely. So right off the top, will the call boxes have Knightscope security capabilities? I like that question.
That is part of the plan. Let's go through each of the clients. So one of the, I think, fun and fascinating things that we've done just very quickly here is our internal client experience team has been chatting with our existing clients, and the case team has been doing the same as well. And I'm excited to report the initial indications as everyone's kind of excited about the acquisition on both ends of the spectrum. And the idea is over the over the assessment time is start looking through those 7,000 and see which ones would be appropriate for an upgrade. And it could be existing Knightscope capabilities. We might have a few things up our sleeve that we might want to put in some future technology products, but the gist of that question is basically the essence of the transaction. Can we build upon what Knightscope's technologies have to offer to an existing infrastructure that, if you look at it, has basically three things that are key to get going. One is someone actually went off and did the public safety risk assessment and decided to put something there physically. It's got power and it's got connectivity, and that's a great running start for us to work with the incoming case team on not only business development, but some new technology development.
Are you planning on keeping all jobs in manufacturing in the US of A?
Today, Knightscope, we design, engineer, and build everything in the US, and that was actually a important point for us. Case actually does that today as well, made in the US. So it's a great marriage of two US companies that are really focused on public safety within our own borders. The idea is, yes, for that all those manufacturing jobs and the operating roles and the like, all to remain US based.
I understand the near term that we want to focus on fulfilling the company mission, but could you please elaborate some more on the convertible note offering that funded this acquisition? Specifically, what is the yield on the note and how was the rest of the acquisition funded?
All right, Mallory, it's time. I don't want to get in trouble, so we'll let Mallory take it over here.
So we did file an 8K on Tuesday, the 11th, that has most of the details in it, but at a high level, it's considered to be an original discount note. So the face value of it is 6.075 million, and the net proceeds are 5 million.
Thanks, Mallory. And that's intended to fund basically a majority of the transaction, which also, despite all the headwinds and all the volatility in the markets, we were able to get an important transaction like that financed. And I would like to take a moment just to thank Mallory. She and our general counsel, Pete Weinberg, have been more than burning the midnight oil for not just days or weeks, but months on end, getting this transaction done, relatively speaking, rather quickly. And Mallory's been the best CFOs I've ever worked with in my entire career. And I'm very, very lucky to be surrounded by an extremely strong, determined, and relentless management team at Knightscope.
I think this one's for me. How many road shows have you done? How many contracts have you gotten from the road shows? Love the road show. So today was actually our 64th road show. Yes, we have closed contracts. I think we're up to somewhere around a dozen contracts closed specifically as a result of the road show. But I expect that number to continue to go up because obviously the sales cycle kind of runs behind the demos. But we've been doing extraordinarily well. We've got some coming up, as a matter of fact, next week here in my hometown.
But why, Stacy? Like, why would we do this roadshow? It was so much easier to just ship a robot, across the country with 3 staffers for, 45-minute demo. and take 4 days to do that? Like, why would you put a bunch of robots in an aquarium? I mean, seriously.
It's actually proven to be an incredible tool. So when we calculated way back when we calculated the cost to do a one-on-one demo, and it was running with shipping and the logistics of getting people there to do a demo.
And stress.
Oh, well, that's a given for sure, as you can see from all the gray and the lack of up here. So anytime we were doing a demo prior, it was costing us anywhere from, I don't know, $7,500 to $15,000 to just to do a demo, and that was ridiculous. Then we go to trade shows and we do events and things like that. And of course, trade shows, if anybody's ever done any kind of event marketing, they know the stupidity and the cost behind that. So when the pandemic hit, it actually did us a favor because it had us refocus our efforts and try to figure out exactly how we wanted to do our marketing. And we came up with this really cool idea. Bill found the pod and the company that brought it to the US, and we were the first one to be able to do this. And now we have this super space age, really cool, as Bill called it, aquarium, to be able to carry the show around the country. It's very cost effective. And as you saw, it already allows us to get in front of people and get the contract sold. Because
I think some folks are going to be, kind of trying to understand that a little bit better. So what works really well is our awesome lead generation team does the initial hello, and then hopefully one of our seasoned security ex-law enforcement, ex-military folks have a chance to do a virtual demo like in a webinar here. But humans still want to touch, see, feel, hear about the machines, and then there's a lot of decision makers involved. And so wherever we're able to conduct a kind of a virtual webinar, talk about the technology, qualify the client, make sure that we can actually be helpful, then bringing the robots to their doorstep is a really, really helpful step in the client development process. But the big important thing is, Stacy, like, how are we going to fit these guys in the pod? Like, we need to get all this stuff out on the Robot Roadshow.
Yeah, I had my call today with the company that helps us out with the logistics and everything, and we talked about that exact subject. So more to come on that later.
Mute Mallory, but we're going to need a second pod and a third pod. Don't let her come back on.
So next question, there have not been many announcements of robots being delivered or sales slowing. Well, first off, I don't agree with that assertion, not even a little bit. Summer sales always slow down just because everybody goes on vacation. So that's a normal cyclical deal. But if you go to our brand new website that I just launched Friday, super excited about that.
What's the URL?
It is knightscope.com.
Right.
Scroll all the way down to the bottom on the right hand side. You'll see on the bottom menu, you'll see investors. If you click on that and then go to the news page, you will see all of the announcements regarding sales, regarding this recent acquisition, deployments, and the like. So lots and lots that have occurred over the past year, and you can read all about them there.
I think let me pile in there. I would say things are actually accelerating. But always, to be fair, we're pretty frank with folks. The supply chain stuff is driving us crazy, and it's not necessarily what you might be thinking. In some cases, it is what you're thinking, which is, okay, we ran out of chips, we ran out of resin, or we ran out of one little tiny resistor that is no longer being produced, and then causes a domino effect of all kinds of problems. And so we've been playing whack-a-mole for like months now. And our team has been, methodically going through either redesigning stuff, finding different vendors, buying in advance, paying a premium, all the kind of tricks that can unlock or fix the situation. You can also end up on the other side of that coin, which is now you have everything fixed and you get a flood of parts showing up, and now you've got to figure out how you're going to get all the stuff built and out the door and deployed. So we're working through all the supply chain issues. It's going to make for a very bumpy revenue recognition as we kind of move forward here. We're still carrying like a couple $1 million backlog of orders that we filed You can check out our regulatory filings to get the exact figure, but we're working our way through it. And we're also seeing the benefits of the robot roadshow to back to Stacy's point.
So a couple of questions about Case's volume. So Case has 7,000 plus devices deployed, but how does that help Knightscope? And then the second half of that question is how many customers does this represent, and approximately what percentage of those customers do you think are likely clients for Knightscope?
Let me do those backwards. So there's nearly 100% overlap on Case's clientele and ours. And that makes for a really strong thesis and then opportunity to execute where you're looking at healthcare facilities, you're dealing with the US federal government, you're working through municipalities, all the public safety folks. There's a very significant overlap in a very positive way. So that made the transaction that much more exciting. How does this help us? I mean, we can kind of talk through, some of the synergies, but you want to get to a point, or we want to get to a point where we can be that trusted advisor and technology provider to all our clients, and as much as possible, always be able to say, yes, you have X problem, we have Y solution. And as you can kind of see behind me, that portfolio over time is going to continue to increase and increase and increase. And the theory behind that, and it's a little bit more than a theory, is, it's not a great thing to say, but criminals and terrorists can be anywhere. So if you're serious about the mission of making the US the safest country in the world, Knightscope needs to be everywhere. And in order to be everywhere, we need almost every form factor possible: small, medium, large, extra large, from, patrolling a highway down to, as I like to say, incognito mode at a US federal courthouse. So there's going to be a lot of product development and new products that need to come out over the next couple of decades. But if we're able to leverage the 7,000 devices that are there and upgrade them with, additional AI, machine learning capabilities, other features and functionality, that brings not only keeping that client happy, but potential additional revenue for us in the future. There's also some obviously economies of scale. There are some logistics solutions that fix a few problems with us, because Case actually has a lot larger footprint than we do right now in terms of just physical facilities. So there's a kind of very long list, and the more you go through it, the more you realize how transformative this transaction is going to be for both companies. And as I told both teams, we're stronger together. And this is not 1 + 1 equals 2. This is 1 + 1 = 7. And we're really excited to kind of start working through all those synergies.
All right, I'm gonna have to get stern on you. We got a lot of questions pouring in, and you need to keep your.
Now you want the Twitter answer?
We need the Cliff's Notes versions.
All right.
Will the Case name be rebranded under Knightscope, or will they stay the same?
I think there's always one key thing for the audience. Getting the deal done is really important. But the most important work to make sure a transaction works really well is the integration. That 3, 6, 9, 12 months, sometimes 3 years if it's really complicated. All that integration work is going to make or break that deal. So there's probably a small time frame just to allow for some practical items to be handled, but everything will be rebranded under the Knightscope banner.
How are we doing for cash? We had a pretty high burn rate versus cash on hand at the end of the last quarter. I'd hate to see us sell a big slug of stock at $2, but suspect we will need to do it.
Yeah, so one of the things about being public is, there's a lot of things I can't say. And if I do say something wrong, like Mallory's going to just pop up right there and like, you can't say that. So we're not giving any kind of forward guidance in terms of any future financings or the like. We're very careful with the cash that we've raised thus far. I think we started the year with the most cash we've ever had on hand in the company's history. And I think as new revenues and new contracts come in, yeah, the burn rate's a little bit higher than I think we all want, but we also need to continue to grow the company and invest in new technologies. We're hopeful that this transaction is going to be one of the key stepping stones in moving forward. But at this time, we don't have any announcements regarding a future financing or the like.
I'm gonna throw Paul under the bus with his question. This looks like Rad's Light My Way. Are you chasing or leading them? Come on, really?
I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm not going to comment on the specific question. I will say that it's extremely important that we're very serious about the long-term mission of securing the U.S. So anyone or any firm that's willing to stand up, put in the hard effort, the blood, sweat, and tears to make a difference, we welcome. We are profoundly naive or arrogant to think that we're going to secure the U.S. all by ourselves. Like, we need, the 35,000 investors that helped us get to even be a public company. We're going to need every single mayor out there listening to step up. Public safety officials, we need to lock arms with the communities. There's a lot of people to transform a country. One single company by itself is not going to be able to do that. So we welcome what might be viewed as competitors. We welcome anyone that's working on public safety, and we only wish them the best.
Did you have much interest from colleges and universities for your robots that made this a good acquisition to look at, or is it that this acquisition gives you a good opening to colleges and universities?
Cool question. Actually, I think both. I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to offer up one thing before you did. First and foremost, I want to make certain that everybody understands this is not the acquisition of Case is not just colleges and universities. They certainly are a big user of the blue light type of technologies, but you got corporate campuses, you got private areas that are all using this. So it's not relegated just to colleges and universities. Bill, go ahead.
I mean, it's airports, it's parks, it's, high value targets. It's all kinds of, so I think to answer the question, I asked the team to put a pause during COVID, going after higher education or just the education vertical because of the practicalities of the pandemic and obvious budget issues. I think this opens up certainly new relationships in the field, and we do have some clients in that sector, but I think it's basically all the above of what you mentioned. I think it opens some new doors, but also possibly accelerate some of our other conversations that we've had ongoing. Again, there's a significant overlap in terms of the clients, and I think that's going to be very helpful for both teams. And shortly to be one team, one mission, one focus.
What's the difference between the K1 tower and the hemisphere? I'm wondering why one would purchase the tower if the hemisphere is less expensive, if they similarly function.
So the K1 tower, I think in some cases provides a greater physical presence. Some of it's a little practicality of being able to position something at that particular location. And in some cases, the hemisphere will be much more cost effective if you have a wall, for example, to hang it on. In some cases, you might be, I don't know, at an ingress egress point at a parking lot, and there's not really a wall or hole there to put the hemisphere. But again, what I want to make sure is over time that we're able to always, as much as we can, say yes to a client, or yes, but give us a little bit of time and we need to make some changes. So over the long run, we're able to make a big difference.
What is the status on the pending government processing? How long until you believe that you'll be able to do business with the government? How far along we are, et cetera. And then the follow-up question to that is update on the process of acquiring a government contract.
So we already have a government contract. We can't execute on it because we have not gone through the entire FedRAMP process. And for the newer viewers, we're trying to wrap up here a nearly 2-year nightmare cybersecurity review process with the U.S. federal government. Our sponsor is our friends over at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, who've been extremely gracious, thoughtful, and supportive over a couple-year, pretty intense process. We're tracking, as we've said publicly, to hopefully have an ATO or an authority to operate at the end of this year. The team at Knightscope has also been burning the midnight oil, trying to get all the remediations done, new processes in place, stuff signed off, teams trained, and the like. And as painful as this has been for us internally, and a lot of folks don't, kind of see externally, it makes the company stronger. It improves a lot of the controls and improve a lot of processes that frankly we didn't have in place. So I'm grateful for the federal government to be doing this. That said, it's still painful. And so we're hopeful by the end of this year, we'll have that ATO, and then, we can start growing at scale at the federal level.
What is your plan for cases, production, and logistics facilities?
Well, part of the integration is getting the teams together and doing the assessments. I think one internal, not so glamorous issue we've had is now we have clients all across the country. I mean, imagine you drove your car 24/7. Probably at the end of the month, you might need a little maintenance and service. So we're having to, ship parts all across the country. And sometimes it would have been helpful to have in market or a specific geographic region, I don't want to say logistics hub, a small footprint to be able to leverage and have some, obviously controls and security around those parts or finished goods inventory. And I think Case has about 9 production and logistics facilities, and getting the teams together to talk about how we can fix some of those logistics issues in terms of providing timely service and parts to our existing clients is certainly going to be a talking point.
In New York City, Bill's home, we are experiencing a lot of crime without apparent motive, where the criminal is not necessarily put off by being identified. Will Knightscope expand to prevent crime other than largely through visual identification?
I think one way to kind of think about this is, it's, as I've often said, it's not a popular thing to say, but our country doesn't have enough officers and guards to be securing the country properly. We don't have enough humans, and we don't have enough tools to give those humans. In some cases, no amount of technology is going to be able to fix a problem. And, in some cases, a human can excel. What we would want to do from a macro perspective is, can we please relieve the humans that are doing the monotonous work that doesn't require a human, and have them redeployed into areas or regions where a human presence, armed or unarmed, would actually de-escalate some of the situation. So you kind of want to think about, I don't know, what's another different example? I don't know. FEMA has multiple warehouses, as you might imagine, and they've got guards kind of staring at those warehouses and paying a pretty penny to do that. I think a machine probably could do that, might be able to do it better, but those same officers are needed in areas that might be a little bit more dangerous or are short-staffed. So we kind of want to do as we've often said, software plus hardware plus humans. There's no way you're just going to fix everything by downloading an app or building a robot or something like that. So it needs to be a kind of combined effort.
The price of Knightscope services have dropped so low. Does it concern you, or do you still have faith that will grow in the future? That's where I understand.
I've seen that comment a lot. What we try to be responsive to our clients' needs, and that doesn't mean there's a wholesale massive change in pricing because we offer single shift or double shift or triple shift. Again, you want to be able to be helpful to a client. In some cases, and it's a minority amount of cases, someone needs single shift graveyard only Monday through Friday, but they need triple shift on Saturday and Sunday. And so we should tell them no. That's probably not a good way to try to be a trusted advisor and try to fix a problem. So I know a lot of folks been kind of looking at the part-time shifts or the single double shifts and thinking the entire financial model is kind of changed dramatically, and that's not the case.
Does Knightscope have future acquisition target strategies, or was Case just a right time, right place development?
So for some of you, we're just meeting or we're just getting to know each other. I was former director of mergers and acquisitions at Ford Motor Company. My last job there, I had bought 22 companies in 11 months. So I've been through this process a lot. I still have a little interesting, I don't know, thoughts from that time. I remember one week I left on Monday, came home on Friday. I'd taken 16 flights in 5 days and just trying to get all these deals done. And it was taxing, but it was extremely exciting as well. Our half the management team, I think I mentioned at Knightscope, has M&A experience. So this is not a one-time event. At least I don't plan it to be. We have a need to accelerate the growth of the company, and we need to do that organically. But we can also do that through acquisition, where we can end up building something much faster. We can grow the revenues much more quickly. There's some technology that would be really interesting, or in cases, in the acquisition of Case, we've got 4: revenue, technology, talent, and facilities. So I am continuing to work on additional opportunities for the operating group or the management team internally at Knightscope to consider, and for the board to consider as well. Remember, we're a publicly traded company. We've got 6 awesome independent board members that have more than sharp pencils to make sure that we're working on the right things. And if we are to acquire anything else, there's going to be more than sufficient scrutiny as we go through the process.
Can you provide any guidance on 22-23 revenues, considering the Case acquisition and resulting cross-selling opportunities?
I'm sure Mallory just perked up, but we don't provide forward-looking guidance. I don't think it would be out of context to just cite the 2021 audited financials. We're a reporting company. It was kind of north of plus or minus 3.3 million last year. Case was, I think, 5.4 million. So if you look at that combined if it were to stay at the same rate, which I can say we're not, we more than doubled the revenue run rate for the combined entity. I think 70-ish days from now, we'll be reporting the full financial impact. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. And Mallory and the team will be working on that required regulatory filing.
Does Case already have technicians in place to provide service across the US that will help Knightscope reduce future maintenance costs for robots?
I was actually one of the interesting deal points for us as we've continued to grow. The need for having nationwide service. In some cases, some of our existing partners may not have service coverage wherever we might sign a contract. There are, off the top of my head, a dozen and a half technicians that, for those that are interested in getting cross-trained, would give us some increased growth opportunity for those employees in terms of career development, but also for us in terms of having a much larger footprint out there. So the answer is yes.
Will the Case market go to? Will the Case go-to-market strategy change?
I think it has to. We both want us to grow significantly. In a lot of cases, man, that word case just keeps coming up. In a lot of cases, both companies have been short-staffed, but the combined entity is much stronger. So we've got a lot of bright people that can now compare notes and go, hey, is this the right process? And in some cases, we have more resources to help or a better, well-defined process. In some cases, it's the other way, where we've got a massive hole, which Case can fill. And that could be, from an engineering standpoint, it could be from a marketing and sales standpoint. But having two companies start working together, integrate them into one, and then just kind of leave all the processes the same, no good. We're going to need to, if we want 1 + 1 = 7, you kind of need to make some changes.
How will the Case acquisition affect your path to profitability?
I think it's more than helpful. I think we bought a company that's profitable on a standalone basis, so that it can only be helpful in terms of the top line and the bottom line. But I think Mallory and I and the whole team are excited about all the operational efficiencies, the marketing and sales stuff that we've talked a little bit at length today. And I get probably the most excited about kind of future product development and new features and stuff to provide to our clients.
This question actually seems suspiciously familiar. I think I actually answered it a couple of days ago, but I think it's good for everybody else's benefit. How are you working and partnering with financial analysts and rating companies like Bloomberg, et cetera, to build brand equity and investor appeal?
How'd you answer it?
I sent him examples of the recent coverage done by Benzinga and so forth. So it was more along the lines of kind of sharing what the financial markets are doing when they see our news.
Yeah, I think, one thing that's a little obvious from the manner in which we took the company public, we didn't go through a normal, S1 IPO with an underwriter. And so there is not yet equity research coverage from, the greater Wall Street community. But I think it's going to be very difficult over time for a company at the cutting edge of self-driving technology, robotics, AI, electric vehicles. The entire country's focus on public safety. The company keeps growing significantly. Not to have an analyst, make a phone call and go, hey, what's going on over there? So we've had some initial calls, and that stuff will take care of itself. But we don't manage or control the analysts, so they'll choose what to work on. But I think with this acquisition and perhaps some other things that we have up our sleeve over time, that'll cure itself.
What are your thoughts on the CHIPS and Science Act that was recently passed? And are there any plans to take advantage of the opportunity? I thought that had to specifically do with semiconductors, but I could be wrong, Bill.
Yeah, typically, I don't believe that applies directly to us. We don't manufacture chips. That said, I'm big on manufacturing and manufacturing in the US. So anything that's going to help stimulate that and give us a strategic advantage, I'm going to be all for that. We've, as a country, not been as aggressive in a lot of technologies and taking that step. I know it's controversial because in some cases, folks are like, "Oh, well, just let the private market or capital markets kind of do its thing." In some cases, that's the right answer. Not in all cases, but I don't believe that'll have an immediate direct impact on us. And remember, these are building a chip plant is a $10-20 billion item that takes a decade or so. So that's going to be a far range from us.
Can you give an estimate of the number of the robots that you're able to build per day or week, assuming the supply chain issues have been alleviated?
We typically will go on the same number we've disclosed before. Our existing K5 3.9 version takes us way too long to build. It's well over 100 hours, and we're pushing on the team to accelerate getting the K5 fifth generation version, which would be, I always mess this up, this guy all the way at the end. And that one actually is targeted to take less than 20 hours. So that's going to be an 80% improvement, and that'll really facilitate getting the throughput out. And again, provided the supply chain whack-a-mole game can stop at some point.
What is the status of the development of the K7?
Oh, sore subject. So I personally and professionally want that vehicle out. I think a couple of things happened, to be frank. One is the technological lift is extremely high to get that machine out the door. If you don't believe me, please go look up the article. I think it was published this week by I think it was Bloomberg.
Yep.
And I think the title is something like $100 billion spent and nothing to show for self-driving vehicles.
Even after 100 billion, self-driving cars are going nowhere. That was the title of it.
Yeah. So if $100 billion goes into a sector, 200 companies working on it, and nobody ships anything, kind of hard, maybe. And so that's why I've been promoting the crawl, walk, run approach. And that's why our machines today, go about 3 miles an hour, and then hopefully we'll get to the K7, and that'll be maybe say 10 miles an hour, and then kind of grow methodically. The costs of some of the technology to put it in a commercially viable vehicle still need a lot of work. So now you've got a technical hurdle and a financial hurdle. And then the third one is just the bandwidth the team has to do what we're doing now with the base business. I couldn't take resources away from that. That said, there's been some changes, I think, on the our strategy internally, and a lot of rewriting and stuff. And there's some new interesting software packages and some improvements in a lot of sensing technology, that the technological hurdle becomes a little bit more palatable for us to take. And I think if we can get the myriad of projects we got going on this year completed on time, then we can start working in earnest on that going forward. But yeah, kind of sore subject. I wanted that thing out like yesterday.
All right, we have more questions than we have minutes left to answer. So quick answers, please. Do you think?
I mean,
I'm going to keep hammering that.
all right. But if they're kind of juicy or important questions, like I can go over a little bit. I'm already exhausted, so staying a little bit longer is not going to make a difference one way or the other.
Yep. Yeah, that's the story of our life right now. Do you think Case will adapt easily to Knightscope ways and methods?
Not sure I like the way that question's asked. I think if you go back to I've quoted Steve Jobs a couple of times this week to some internal folks. Is like, you don't hire really smart people and tell them what to do. You should hire really smart people and then ask them what we should do, like have them tell us what to do. Case has 15 years of significant experience. They built literally a sizable company with limited resources. And there's probably a lot of things that we should be learning from Case. There are known gaps that Case has that I know that we can help. So I think it's going to be a mixed bag. There's some things where, like, hey guys, you can't be doing that. Let me introduce you to 3 or 4 people. This is how we've been handling it. Isn't this much better than that? And everyone's kind of sane and rational. I go, yeah, okay, let's go do that. There will be opportunities where Case is like, what the heck have you guys been doing? That's not the way to do that. We should do this. And our team's probably going to go, yeah, of course, please. Can we get some guidance and help? So I think that's, something that Wall Street probably doesn't always pay too much attention to, is these next 3 to 6 months are extremely critical. You need the team to bond, to gel, cross-fertilize, and make decisions. Like, we can't having committee after the subcommittee to figure out, what process we want to use. Like, okay, compare A and B, B looks better, go. And I think if the Knightscope team, I know, will be very gracious and accommodating our incoming new team members, our new team members from Case. In a lot of cases, it keeps coming up. A lot of cases, hasn't gone through a merger or acquisition. We want to make sure that they're comforted in knowing that they shouldn't be worried about their jobs. They need to worry about how many jobs we have to get done. And I think things will work out very well. I think I'm comforted in the fact that I've gone through this. Mallory's gone through it. Half the management team has gone through it. Actually, the CEO, Sebastian over at Case, has also been through some M&A. So we've got a lot of experienced hands, and we just need to be, thoughtful and methodical. And that was not the short answer that you were looking for.
All right, next question. Thomas, I'm going to send you a contract as soon as we're done with this webinar. I could have 3 hemispheres for what I pay ADT per month. Would they be Yep. Would they be a logical replacement, or are they more commercially focused?
As long as we can be helpful and there is a use case there, a genuine use case, I think there's an opportunity. I mean, we do have actual, I'll say, residential applications, be it an HOA or a apartment complex, and in some cases, a very large estate. Those are certainly opportunities. So yeah, please go to knightscope.com/hemisphere and get us your details, and Stacy or one of his teammates will be sure to follow up with you.
Without referring to any competitor specifically, have you ever lost a sale to a competitor's robotic solution?
I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure it's happened. I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but I mean, we've been at this for 9+ years. For me to sit here and assert that that's never happened would be kind of
I can definitely think of one bank that we lost one to, but there's not a lot of other ones. But I mean, I'm sure there's many that we actually don't even know about too.
Yeah, true.
What has been your contract retention percentage? Are you able to increase your billing rate for current customers? First off, we call them clients, not customers.
Yeah.
We sell a service, not a product. Sorry,
Yeah.
That's my pet peeve.
Increased billing rates probably not a good idea for a lot of cases. I think we're priced very competitively and attractively. Like, trying to get something like we have for 75 cents an hour to $9 an hour, it's hard pressed. to wanting to find that kind of capability and that value elsewhere. Retention, we don't report on that in our regulatory filings. There's always improvements to be made, and I've said this before publicly. So we kind of hacked our way here over the last way too many years, and this last year plus has been getting rid of the blue duct tape, and so fixing the technical debt and fixing some of the process debt. So things that worked when we were 15 or 20 employees doesn't work when now you're with the combined entity well north of 100 folks. So there's a lot of process changes, and with those process changes comes standing up a client experience department, which Ronnie Gallegos, who kindly took the reins of that this year, and his CX team has been making a lot of good progress on improving the overall client experience, which goes immediately and directly towards client retention. Work to be done, but we're making good progress there.
This one may be for me. How has the Scout program been productive? I would say yes. We've not signed, to my knowledge, I don't think we've signed an actual contract as a result yet, but we have 164 Scouts in 23 states currently, and we've had numerous leads come in. I caution people when they sign up for the Scout program, it is not a sales program, it is a referral program. So you go to your Rolodex, if you're old enough to remember what a Rolodex is.
Hold on, somebody just paged me. Hold on.
You go through your list of colleagues and teammates and people that you've known over the years. And if you know somebody who runs a security program or has that responsibility within their control, then you sit there and poke and prod them to come to Knightscope and have a look at our technology. So that's the purpose of the program, is to create leads, qualified leads. And we've had several dozen that have come through, and actually we're making progress with several of them too. And matter of fact, had the couple of robot road shows, I know for a fact, up in Ohio as a result of those leads. So yes, it is working, and I cannot be thankful enough for the people who are providing those leads. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How difficult do you anticipate that it will be to generate additional revenue from customers over the next 10 years? Is there a quarterly, annual goal in regards to rate increase to push the company along a pathway of profitability?
How difficult? Well, I could look at it glass full, or glass half full, glass half empty. What we're doing is extremely difficult. Like I said, it's autonomous self-driving technology, robotics, AI, electric vehicles, all combined into one thing that needs to operate 24/7 with a client down our throat across an entire country. Kind of hard. In a sector that is not that progressive on adopting new technologies. So you can take that view and go, wow, this is going to be hard. You can take the other view and go, a lot of the garden companies can't even staff the positions because there's not enough humans to do the jobs. And when they do get the jobs, it's 100 to 400% employee turnover rates. That means they stayed in the job for 90 days, maybe 12 months, and you're done. So was it a viable job in the first place? And you have the whole country, including the president, focus on reimagining public safety, and we happen to have a solution that works, and it's been proven to work. And if you don't believe me, just go to knightscope.com/crime, and you can see all the nice little statistics of the robots that are coming to kill everyone and take everyone's job that actually been helping society. And so at a given point in time, it will flip, and it'll become a lot easier, and the growth curve will be dramatically different than it is today. That said, we're continuing to grow and grow significantly, especially with this acquisition. So I think over the long term, I'm pretty bullish and really excited. I've said this before, my entire net worth is in Knightscope. So you damn well know that I'm really motivated to making sure that we're extremely successful. But to be frank, the headwinds of getting the company started, and Stacy was there from the beginning, Mercedes, Aaron, I mean, it's been brutal while we're in the private markets. Like, hey, this will never work. It's hardware and software, too complicated. You should pick one. Physical security is not an investment thesis. No, we don't want to fund this. You should go away. And so we kind of ignored everybody and just did what we said we were going to go do. And here we are. We've operated over 1.7 million hours across the country. We have clients in almost every vertical, hopefully about to get an approval to operate with an authority to operate with the US federal government. Probably not a good idea to bet against this team. And I expect over the next decade or two, we're going to make significant increases in growth, both organically and through acquisition.
Have you considered opening Knightscope satellite showrooms and or customer support, client support centers permanently located in large cities, especially where we have major accounts, not only to be closer to the client, but to save on logistics of roadshows and shorten time to market? I'll take the first part of that. Yes, absolutely we have, and we've already done it. As a matter of fact, we had a pop-up store in New York City and Manhattan for a few months a couple of years ago. So yes, we've done it. Excuse me. But I'll let Bill answer the second half of the question.
Well, we can see if Mallory's paying attention. I mean, there's 50 states, so we should have like 50 pods. Like we can just have one pod running around each state and not having to ship them all across the country.
I keep hitting the button to mute her.
We did actually announce that for 2023, we are opening a Knightscope development center in Washington, D.C. Hopefully, as an immediate action or as part of, I should say, the longer term plan with the U.S. federal government. So that likely will be our first development center in terms of not only technology development, but also client development. And given our experience in the showroom in Manhattan, and then with the pandemic, the very successful pod with the Robot Roadshow, over time, I believe your thesis is correct. And I view an opportunity for us, not only just from a client perspective, a technology perspective, but there is a logistics, operational aspect for those as well. So I think that's certainly going to be an opportunity.
What percentage of clients are renewing or expanding their contracts?
We don't necessarily report on that particular metric. I can say that we have numerous clients have renewed a second year, a third year, a fourth year, multiple on 5 years. And you don't get those kind of renewals if you're not creating a good amount of value. I think with our new client experience department that we set up, that's going to only get better and better over time.
Will the Case and Knightscope sales teams merge into one or stay separate?
This is one team, one mission, one focus. So everything is is in the process of being combined. And so you've got two very determined teams who have been around the block, know a thing or two, now able to compare notes, and I couldn't be more excited.
How are your robots priced? Is it by unit, by hours, or both? We offer a subscription service. That is why I call them clients, because we are providing a service to our clients. They are priced by robot, not by hour, but by block of time. So the way the security industry works is not, hey, I'm hiring a person. It's, hey, I'm hiring so many hours of service. So we wanted to marry what we do with the normal way that they're used to buying things. And so that's how we offer it. So we have clients that are operating 24/7, 365. We have some that are operating 12 hours a day. And now we even offer 8-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts a few days a week, so that we can accommodate the need of the end user. So we kind of cater to the end user and how they're actually buying things now, so that we can give them more options and give them ways to create revenue for Mallory and make her happy.
Stacy, shorter answers. I mean, come on.
Shoot. The safe contracts that Case has in California haven't been updated in years. Is there a plan to put out new bids with the counties to bring them up to date?
I think that's going to be a hand conversation between the incoming new teammates from Case and those existing clients, and thinking through how we can do that significant upgrade. So that is on the to-do list, but we need to make sure that those clients have an opportunity and are at the table to influence that technology development roadmap. And I think what we want to do is maybe have some technology roadmap brainstorming summits internally, come up with a few options, and then be able to sit down with those clients and get some good thoughtful feedback. But that is certainly on the to-do list.
How will the Case acquisition affect the monitoring picture for both the robots and the blue light existing phones?
So I'll just take this moment now to, call out our senior operations manager, Jane Miller. Just tell her that, she's now has 7,000 additional machines she needs to monitor. I think she probably passed out. I think, one, we need to get all those devices in the network and do some monitoring. Case already does some, and some on health of the machines. I think, there's two kinds of monitoring, right? There's security monitoring, and there's the health of the network. So that's another task list. And just to give you a flavor of the amount of work that needs to get done in terms of these kinds of questions, integration questions, Mallory, who's going to play lead project manager for the integration here, she's got a list of 200 plus items that we need to go through in order to complete the integration work. And that is certainly one of the items that's on the list is, operationally, how do we handle the monitoring, and how could we potentially build and grow Knightscope Plus, which is our remote monitoring offering to some of those incoming new clients.
How many mayors have you been in contact with for the mayoral challenge? When can we expect an announcement on this?
Ooh, federal government, state government, local government, things take a long time. Stacy and I have been at it with a few. There's certain interest, but this is going to take some time. When we do things like that, we've got a lot of stuff in the background that needs to happen. And in some cases, for example, this acquisition is going to be rather helpful for some of those discussions. But we don't have anything immediate to announce regarding that.
Appreciate the narrative focus on security. Listening to you speak about self-driving vehicles, is there an important narrative for Knightscope in the climate action space?
In the climate action space, the only thing I could think of, I'm not sure I understand the question, is it would be really helpful to get all those polluting security monitoring vehicles off the road. And, it can cost a city more than a pretty penny to run a patrol vehicle around a city, especially if they need to run two up. If you got two officers running 24/7, you kind of actually need 8 officers. 8 officers plus the vehicle, plus the fuel, plus the maintenance, plus the service. Like, that's easily $1 million more, well more than $1 million a year, and that's for one patrol. So I think over the long term, that's certainly something where we're keeping an eye on.
Is there anything the company can do to alleviate current supply chain issues? Is there significant cause for worry over the speed at which the company is able to receive the hardware required to build the robots?
Our illustrious VP of Operations, Ryan Fanchulo, used to be 7 feet tall. He is now 4'9", having to deal with supply chain issues. He's done an unbelievable job given the circumstances. I mean, he's still keeping the trains running, but the list of things, redesign stuff, find a different supplier, get a bunch of brokers around the world to find 3 of something, 17 of something, pay a premium, buy ahead, pay, there's all kinds of tricks to work through it. It's working. It's very bumpy. And it makes it really hard internally to manage that chaos, but clients don't care. Analysts don't care. You just need to kind of work through the issues, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Is the call box business a dying business now that everyone has a cell phone?
I would say not. It's certainly a natural question. I think over the long term, that's certainly going to be problematic. I look at it as infrastructure that we can build upon. I think if we were to buy the company and kind of leave it as is, that would be like a massively dumb move. But if you're going to buy the company, engage our new teammates, and challenge them as to what that future could look like and how much more improvement we can provide to communities, to our clients, to just the entire public safety equation, then things get really exciting. One little crazy fantasy that I've got is like, all right, so the FBI publishes this most wanted list like on a daily basis. One day, I hope, I want to have 1 million machines in network across the country. If we're able to find 9 out of 10 of the FBI most wanted, every month for the FBI, I think we probably kind of made a big impact. And I think this is the beginning of building that nationwide infrastructure that the country sorely needs.
Who's currently your largest competitor? Are they a low enough valuation for potential additional acquisition at some point in the future, hopefully without relying on dilution of common shares?
And I don't think we have indirect competitors. So there are, some smaller companies kind of making some progress, primarily on the fixed stationary stuff. Nothing really mobile at scale. There's some folks that have been making some good progress, I think, on the indoor side of things, but nothing on the outdoor side of things. Not necessarily stuff that I've been looking at just yet, but you never know. Things could change. But right now, I've got my list of things that I would like us to consider internally, and obviously collaboratively with the board to kind of set the tone on the growth aspects. And you never know.
With the current political environment becoming increasingly volatile, do you anticipate the company will be able to increase sales regardless of whoever holds political office? Will left, right side of the political aisle be less likely to reward contracts to the company?
I was on Benzinga this morning and they hit me with a similar question from a different angle. Oh my God, interest rates are going up. The market's down. The S&P is looking like hell. NASDAQ looks terrible. How are you going to sell? And I'm like, criminals and terrorists can be anywhere. They're not sitting in front of a Bloomberg terminal. They're not watching, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, pick your flavor all day long. And what political wins is it today? Should I steal that car or not? Like they're not connected. We need to just focus on the root cause of the problem, which is a unifying one. I don't believe the founders of our country ever expected us to build a society where going to work, going to school, or going to a movie theater literally came with the risk of being shot or killed. I think everyone, regardless of your political motivation, can agree that that is not acceptable. And so we hope that over time, and given the cross-section of awesome following that Knightscope has, that we can be part of the unifying call to action across the country to make a fundamental change on how we manage public safety in this country.
All right, we got, I'm going to cut it off at 4 more questions. We're 11 minutes over right now, but
4 questions. All right,
here we go.
let's go.
This one's really important to both of us because it's based off of why we started the company. I would think that with what has happened across our country this past decade, with schools across the country in the past decade, that they would all love to have your robots securing their campuses. What do they say when you try to sell to them?
I can start, Stacy, if you want to help, but I think the first issue, one, we've closed a couple of clients there and actually have deployed as requested. I think the way I view it, there's a fundamental problem when you can't pay teachers properly and there's not enough supplies in the building for the students to learn. And now you need to put an additional layer of expenditure for whatever security solution you might choose is going to be problematic. So at some point in time, probably one of the other discussions point for the Washington, D.C. Knightscope Development Center is, unfortunately, going to have to do a little bit of lobbying and, having a really frank conversation with the Department of Education going, hey, folks, we've got a solution here. We can be helpful, but these schools are starving for resources. In some cases, they've started to take some action. There's, obviously some COVID monies that have been put towards safety, but I think it comes down to there's a fundamental disconnect and it's a budget problem.
So from my point of view, for those of you who don't know, I actually, until recently, ran the entire sales part of the company. So I personally sat across the table from numerous people in schools talking through these discussions. I think threefold, we can talk about the answers. One would be the challenge between the public and the public's perception of school resource officer assets, meaning police officers who are put into schools to be able to help protect them there. I happen to be the person who started the very first Crime Stoppers in the entire country that was incorporated into a school. And I can tell you the unbelievable value of having a school resource officer. So for a school to kind of push back on the idea of having a police officer in the school, to me, is ridiculous. Well, as we have that conversation, obviously the technology is an extension of that. It's a surveillance device to an extent. And that becomes problematic from an optics standpoint, which is the second point of, oh, well, you got a surveillance robot in the school watching my kids. What about their privacy and so on and so forth? Well, number one, they're in a public place and they don't have an expectation of privacy. Two, they're still expected to behave and not cause a problem. Three, they also become targets for sexual predators who happen to be living in the area. So you want to be able to provide an insulated barrier to that kind of activity at a school. And then lastly, as Bill was just talking about, budget. Huge issue with budgets. They can't afford to pay their teachers. They can't afford to pay security. They can't afford to put security cameras in the schools either. And so all of these things kind of culminate on they don't know what to do. And because there are over 138,000 schools in the US, and each one is under the budget of the municipality in which they operate, they're kind of tied. Their hands are tied as far as what they can do. So that's part of the reason, you were asking about the difference between the hemisphere and the tower earlier, somebody was. And that's part of the reason why we had the hemisphere come up to be so much less expensive. We put a lot of effort into making sure that we were going to be able to provide a product that could be used in schools and could be more affordable, so that we hope to take one of those objections away from the people who are looking at them. But
yeah, I mean, basically to build on that, Stacy, if all these leaders, CEOs, hospital administrators, school administrators, principals, et cetera, if your people and students and employees and tenants are your most valuable and precious assets, it's going to be a really hard conversation as to why you're not using the most advanced technology available to better secure their safety. And that hemisphere is the beginning of that conversation, because you can't come back to us and go, yeah, we can't afford 75 cents an hour. It's just not worth it. So I think that's, one thing that we're trying to do is kind of broaden the appeal, so that we can start making an impact. Not every school, everything that we just said, not everyone's in that situation. There's not to put everyone in the same bucket. There is some traction with some municipalities and some schools, but at large, I think that there are some headwinds there.
All right, last two questions, because one of them you actually talked about. It was a question about lobbying, so you answered that question. Does the drop in stock price worry you, considering how much people paid in the pre-IPO?
I said this for the longest of time since the start of the company. This is long term. This is going to take a while. You look at when Tesla or SpaceX were born. I think it was 2003 and 2002. In order to build sizable real companies, you need a couple of decades. Stuff, you don't just download stuff from the cloud and all of a sudden expect something wonderful to happen. I think my personal view is markets are extremely volatile in the short term, in a lot of cases often wrong. But over the long term, the capital markets will reward the companies making progress with real business models, with real technology, and real margins. And I have all the confidence in the world that Knightscope will meet that challenge and meet that mission. In the short term, I mean, look at almost every company that listed. Folks are down 50, 70, 80, 95%. Some of the folks that, we know are going to get delisted. And it's we're in the middle of a pandemic, supply chain issues, market volatility, inflation, looming wars. It's kind of a little bit of a crazy time. But again, criminals and terrorists do not care. We need to focus on fixing our clients' problems. The rest of it, I'm sure, will take care of itself.
All right, last one. How fast can you scale production of the new robots to meet the surge in demand?
Well, that's one of the things that's cool about a growing company. We're recruiting. So please make sure to go to Knightscope.com. We're actually recruiting production technicians to help in the additional growth. And we've got a bunch of open positions. And we're really excited about continuing to grow the Knightscope team. And I'll kind of wrap this up with just a thank you to our existing team who's worked literally day and night, like literally 24/7, 365. And also thank the incoming case team who spent the last decade and a half building a wonderful company. And together we're going to build upon that. And most importantly, make sure to visit Stacy's brand new shiny Knightscope.com website, and you can actually get one of these there. But thanks everybody for tuning in. You can get that one too. And I think we can wrap it up, Stace.
Bill, thank you so much for taking the time. I went through several comments of people saying, hey, we really appreciate everything you guys do every time you put on one of these town halls. Very grateful. One of them said it's the best one yet. So that's encouraging.
Hey, progress.
And everybody appreciates the transparency, because we're always trying to do this to be available to folks who were.
And look, Mallory didn't pop up and like scold me. So this was good.
So thank you, Bill. Thanks everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. And we'll have this recorded live for you and posted on our social media so you can watch it later if you need to refresh.
And don't forget, long Knightscope and short the criminals. We'll see you on the other side.
Good night, everybody.